The next capital budgeting method is the internal rate of return, or the IRR. The IRR is simply the weighted average cost of capital or the discount rate that would give us an NPV of zero. Okay. Obviously, this accounts for the time value of money, and there is also an objective decision rule. And we'll talk about this in more detail later, but generally speaking, if your cash flows are well behaved, and again, I'll define that later, if the IRR is higher than your cost of capital, okay? So I said the IRR is higher than the cost of capital, which is the same as this one here. The cost of capital is below the IRR. Then your NPV is going to be positive. So you should accept the project. If we have the other case, if your cost of capital is above the IRR, in this case, then the NPV will be negative. So you shouldn't accept the project. So we have an objective decision rule, right, which is based on comparing the IRR to the cost of capital for the firm. However, there are some problems with the IRR, and some of them arise from what I just said earlier. Okay. The first problem is that the IRR assumes that we can reinvest any of our cash flow at the IRR. So basically, if the IRR of a project is 40%, it means that whenever I generate a cash flow, I can reinvest that cash flow at 40%, which is unlikely to be true in the real world, right? The weighted average cost of capital is the expected return that you should be making as a firm or that the firm should be making. So that uh, if the IRR is higher than our weighted cost, average cost of capital, it means I'm probably unlikely to be able to reinvest my funds at that interest rate. There is a method I will discuss later that is not used a lot in the real world that is called the MIRR for modified IRR. And this method tries to remove this problem from the IRR. Now, problem one is a real problem, but it's mostly a theoretical problem. It doesn't actually lead to any practical issue. So you should know about it. You should be able to discuss it a little bit, but it's not as important as the other ones. Problem two is that we need to have conventional cash flows in order to use the IRR. And this is linked to what I discussed about the objective decision rule above here. Okay. Problem three is that we cannot use the IRR to compare project. If we want to compare project, we can use the NPV, we can use the profitability index, which I'll talk about a bit later, but we shouldn't be using the IRR. It doesn't really work. Now, I talked about all of these problems a little bit later when I introduced the MIRR and when I introduced the NPV profile. So because we don't have these tools right now, just learn what these are, learn what these problems are like just by heart, and later we'll discuss the reasoning as to why they are problems. In the next video, I will do this example.